In this lesson, we'll learn how we can use the X sheet to change out phoneme mouth expressions for our lip-synced animations. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so now that we've spent the past two lessons talking about how we can manually change our different phoneme mouth expressions, as well as using the sound element editor, let's go ahead and recap both and talk about the differences again between the two, and just kind of reiterate the route you would want to take when using both, right? So again, if you're going to manually edit these different phoneme mouth expressions, you can basically use the data view or the library view, and on any one of these given cells, you can switch out that drawing for whatever phoneme mouth expression you want to basically set on that frame, right? And so that you may find that as a really good approach. It really provides you with a lot of control. It allows you to really see what you're changing as you change it, as you're scrubbing through here. Now, if you click on, again, your audio layer, you can access the layers properties view for that layer and go into the sound element editor. And this is where you can basically scrub through your audio. And as you do this, you can see the little phoneme example right here, how it changes in accordance to basically how you've mapped your phonemes with your audio and how you've synced it up. And so what you can do is on any one of these frames, you can basically stop on a particular frame and you can switch out with one of the different phonemes from your phoneme options here, okay? So on this particular frame, it's showing that I have phoneme C, which is basically our E expression, our E phoneme expression. We could easily click on A to switch it to that MBP phoneme expression. We could do this on multiple frames, and when we click close, you won't notice that change has taken effect just yet because you're forced to basically remap again for those changes to take effect, okay? Which is kind of annoying. It's kind of tedious. And the downside to that is you would lose all of your manual work if you've already done that, okay? So again, if you're going to do any manual work, just make sure you're doing it after you've done any kind of changes in the sound editor. Personally, I like to just stick to the manual route. I feel like I've just got a little bit more control, and so that's really up to you, the type of control you want to have with your lip syncing, okay? Let's go ahead now and talk about the X sheet. So we have our tab right here for the X sheet. If you're not seeing it for some reason, you can click on this downward arrow in any one of these views to bring it up. And it's off your screen on that drop-down menu, but it's towards the bottom. So let's go ahead and click on the X sheet, and let's actually expand this view up so we can see it in its entirety. So we basically have our different layers here at the top. These are the same layers that you would see in the layers section of your timeline view. And then we also have all of our frames over here for our scene off to the screen left here, okay? And so we can basically scroll through, and on our mouths layer, we can see the different drawings that basically represent the different phoneme mouth expressions, okay? And so what I liked about basically naming those drawings to their appropriate phonemes is I can very easily tell what phonemes are on what frame as I just kind of scroll through our X sheet here, okay? So it's just kind of a nice way for me to kind of see everything that we have here. Now, if we click on our audio layer, we have the option to basically change how it's displayed. So just clicking on this little arrow right here in the upper screen left of this view, we can go to sound display and we can change it from waveform, which is what it's on now. We could change it to mouth shapes, so we can basically see that naming convention for each one of the phonemes that we have basically on our mouths layer here that's synced up to our audio. Or we could simply change it to sound name. So it's really kind of your personal preference, what you prefer to see as you're working in the X sheet view. Let's go back to our timeline view. We'll go ahead and bring that back down. And let's go ahead and play our animation really quick.
Digital Tutors, teaching the people who make movies and games.
Okay, so obviously in between lessons, I kind of came back through, made a few more tweaks and adjustments manually to some of these different phoneme mouth expressions to better sync it up with our audio. And I also added some subtle animation to the head as well as the eyebrows. So you can kind of see that right there. Now I am noticing a couple of spots that I'd like to tweak, just kind of push a little bit further. And it's right around frame 20, I think. So if you recall in lesson 4, when we were working in the sound editor, we basically used that feature to basically change the mouth expression for frame 17. We change it to that U mouth expression since he's saying tutors at that point. And I think that worked nicely. However, on 18 and 19, that exposure is extended for 2 frames, exposure for the phoneme E, okay? And that all works fine. However, I may want to change 18 so it's just a nicer transition in between U and that E mouth expression. That way when he's saying tutors, it doesn't pop as much, okay? So in this instance, we may want to use our WQ mouth expression. So it's this one right here. Now typically this mouth expression is reserved for sounds like w, or qua, but it's also a very small mouth expression, kind of a small oval shape that I think would make nice for a transition between that U and that E. Okay, so it's kind of a doing more with less type of situation. So we can do this in the X sheet, just a different way of basically editing these phoneme mouth expressions. So we'll go back into the X sheet, and we want to basically change that out on 18 right there. Okay, so I already know that I've used W and Q on a later frame, so I'm just going to click on that, hit Control C on my keyboard. We'll come back up to frame 18 and just hit Control V to paste. Okay, so basically it puts that right in there. Now, if we didn't want to basically bring in or copy in that additional phoneme mouth expression, we could have just extended U by just holding down on it and dragging. So it's kind of 2 ways of working there. You could copy something in, or if we chose to extend that exposure for U, we could have done that as well. So pretty cool stuff that we can do here in the X sheet view. Go ahead and go back to our timeline view. Let's play that.
Digital Tutors, teaching the people who make movies and games.
So that's looking a lot better. So a nicer transition right there. And I'm kind of seeing the same thing over here around frame 50, 51, where he's saying make. We're not getting any of that m for make right there. And I kind of feel like right around 50 or 51, we could probably drop in that MBP phoneme mouth expression again, the closed mouth. So we'll go ahead and go back into our X sheet. Okay, and let's expand this up. And I've actually got an MBP right here. So I'll just go ahead and copy that. And they'll go back up to frame 51 right there and paste that in. So this is kind of another reason why I prefer to name all those different drawings containing the different phonemes to actually show what phonemes they represent. And just working here in the X sheet, I can very quickly see what I have, where it's at, and if I want to kind of copy and paste or move things around. It's just a different way of kind of seeing everything and making adjustments. So really cool stuff. Let's go back to our timeline view and play that back again.
Digital Tutors, teaching the people who make movies and games.
And that feels way better. So just one frame can really make a difference in the fluidity of your lip sync. Okay. Now let's talk about how we can use the X sheet view pretty much the same way we would use that sound editor that we can get to through the layer properties of our audio layer. Okay, so let's go back to our X sheet view. Okay, and if you recall, let's go to say frame 18. So right here, we just changed that one to that WQ. Okay. Well, we can basically do the same approach that we can do in the sound element editor by going to this arrow here, going to lip sync, and then change mouth shape to. Now this is actually off our screen, so let's go ahead and expand our X sheet. So going to that arrow, lip sync, change mouth shape to, and there's that naming convention once again. Okay, so let's say we want to change that particular cell to say C. C is basically the E phoneme mouth expression, if you recall. So we can click on C. Now you'll notice it hasn't changed that to C at all. Okay, why is that? It's just like using that sound element editor. It wants us to remap everything, okay? So let's go ahead and go to map again from the layers properties of our audio layer. And I'm going to go ahead and remap everything. I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to kind of show you what I was talking about at the beginning of this lesson. What will happen if we execute a function like this after we've done manual work. Okay, so now that I've basically inserted the appropriate phoneme drawing names to match up with their designated spots here in the lip sync mapping dialog box, and I've also made sure that we have our destination layer once again set to mouths, we'll go ahead and click OK. Now once again, we're basically changing that frame right there, frame 18, we're changing it to E, the E phoneme, okay? And so when we did that, we chose like C, I believe. So let's go ahead and click OK. Okay, so we can see how that worked, that change that we applied in the X sheet, which is pretty much the same thing if we had taken the route using the sound editor, has taken effect. The downside is we've lost any of those manual changes that we've made. So right there in frame 51, we don't have that edit we just made moments ago, and any of those other edits that we made in the previous lesson when we talked about manual lip syncing. So now if we go ahead and play back through.
Digital Tutors, teaching the people who make movies and games.
So it's a vast difference. Obviously, it looks a lot more poppy. It doesn't look as fluid as it did like it did when we actually went through and manually made a lot of adjustments. I'm going to go ahead and hit Control-Z on my keyboard to take a step back. Okay, and you can see that adjustment change down there, reverting back to the way our cells looked prior to that change.
Digital Tutors, teaching the people who make movies and games.
So that's looking a lot better. So again, just to kind of reiterate, these are things that you need to think about, especially if you're going to make any kind of manual edits. You want to think about, especially using the sound editor, you want to use that before doing any manual edits. And the same thing applies to that approach I just showed you using the X sheet. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed this course and are able to basically take a lot from it, all the different things that we've talked about and learned in lip syncing your different phoneme mouth expressions and apply that to your own character lip sync animations. And again, if you're completely unfamiliar with phonemes, I encourage you to watch my course on drawing phoneme mouth expressions in Photoshop. That'll really allow you to hit the ground running as you come in here and kind of draw and design your own phonemes for your own character before getting into the lip sync aspect of it. So thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.